Let's talk about one of the most famous works of Ethiopian religious literature, the Mezmuረ Christos, which translates to the Psalms of Christ. Now, that's a pretty revered title, right? But there's a fascinating twist hidden inside that name, one that, well, it unravels a much, much bigger story.
So here's the central question we're going to tackle. When we say the Psalms of Christ, are we talking about one single, legendary masterpiece? Or is the story just a little more complicated than that?
Believe it or not, the answer is three. Yeah, there are three totally different compositions, written centuries apart by different authors with completely different goals, that all just happen to share the exact same title. It's like a historical puzzle that's been hiding in plain sight this whole time. And get this, these three works span over 500 years of history. We've got one from the 15th century, another pops up in the 16th, and then the final one appears in the 20th century. So, to really understand what the Psalms of Christ is, we've got to dive into each one.
Okay, let's start at the beginning with the first and probably the most well-known version. This one was composed by a monk way back in the 15th century, right during a golden age of Ethiopian literature.
The author himself is pretty fascinating. Tradition holds that his name was actually Mezmuረ Christos, same as the title of his work. He was writing during the reign of the incredible Emperor Zara Yaakov, and here's the kicker. He implies in one of the Psalms that he wrote this huge, monumental work when he was just 25 years old.
Now, you have to understand, this version wasn't meant to be some standalone book. Think of it more like a companion piece. Each of its 151 hymns was a direct spiritual commentary on a psalm from the original Psalms of David. The idea was to read them together, to really enrich the meaning of the original.
And what's really cool is its structure. The author actually divided his 151 psalms into 5 sections, and each section corresponds to one of the 5 human senses. It's just this beautifully creative way to organize a spiritual reflection on Scripture.
All right, so let's jump forward about a century. A completely different Psalms of Christ appears, and this one, it had a vastly different purpose.
This second version was written in 1576 or 77 by a scholar named Abba Bahre, and he was not interested in spiritual commentary. No, this was a man who was obsessed with precision.
We don't even have to guess his motive, because Bahre tells us himself. He created his Psalms of Christ to be a yardstick, a tool for measuring the accuracy and integrity of copies of the original Psalms of David. And just look at what he meant by yardstick. It is absolutely astonishing. Bahari's work matched the original Psalms of David not just in the number of psalms or lines per psalm, but in the number of words per line and even, get this, the number of letters per line. It was an exact structural replica, just an incredible feat of scribal discipline. And as if that wasn't amazing enough, in his introduction, Bahre listed his 91 sources. And this list, wow, it gives us this tantalizing glimpse into a lost library. He mentions things like the famous Indian fable Kalila wa Dimna and the Vision of Elijah, texts that are otherwise completely unknown in the classical Ethiopian literary tradition as we know it today.
Okay, let's fast forward now, nearly 350 years later, and we land in the 20th century for our third and final Psalms of Christ.
This version was written by a man named Alaga Taya Gebra Mariam. Now, he wasn't a medieval monk or a meticulous scholar. No, he was a modernist intellectual, and that perspective would completely shape his work.
So, the thing that truly sets this version apart, the game changer, is that Alaga Taya was heavily influenced by Protestantism, and this gave his hymns a style and a theological flavor that was just worlds away from the deeply rooted traditions of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church.
And, well, you can probably guess what happened next. That influence was almost certainly the reason this third Psalms of Christ never caught on. It was just too far outside the established tradition to ever be adopted by churches or monasteries. And because of that, no manuscript copies are known to even exist beyond the author's own original.
So there we have it. A spiritual commentary, a textual yardstick, and a modern hymnal, all sharing one name. So let's pull all this together and look at why telling them apart is so important. So, to wrap it all up, the 15th century monk created a widely beloved commentary, beautifully structured around the 5 senses. Then, the 16th century scholar, Abba Bahre, built this incredibly precise tool for textual accuracy that also gave us a peek at lost books. And finally, the 20th century modernist Alaga Taya wrote a personal hymnal that, because of its outside influences, just never circulated at all. It really leaves you with a fascinating question, doesn't it? When you think about those lost books Abba Bahir mentioned, it all sort of clicks into place. If one simple title can hide 3 entirely separate histories, spanning half a millennium, what other incredible stories are still out there, just waiting to be discovered inside the pages of ancient manuscripts?